Hello, good evening, and welcome back this evening with three stories. One of Tommy Robinson in Limeside, Oldham, and the Muslim Defence League all the way from Halifax there. We have McDonald's being asked to not sell milkshakes at a Nigel Farrage rally, and we have the Switzerland gun right vote, the referendum to have stricter gun laws. So, from the Manchester Evening News, 5 hours ago. Police say they will not tolerate hate speech after violence flares at Tommy Robinson event in Oldham. When we say free speech, however, we certainly do not mean speech or actions that are full of hate. Actions full of hate, sure, whatever. But speech full of hate, well, if you're not inciting violence, then why does it matter? Who decides what is hateful? That is all down to your ideology. I would call this black bloc tactics, but that could be taken the wrong way. So violence broke out as Tommy Robinson supporters and members of the Muslim Defence League came face to face in Oldham, in Limeside. Yes, and Tommy Robinson purposely chose to pick these suburbs, as you can tell even from this photo, that it is away from the city centre in order to avoid confrontations like this, even when the Labour Party had their own conference or rally inside the city centre. So he decided to try and avoid confrontations, but the Muslim Defence League weren't having any of that and had instructed their followers over the past few days at least to try and confront Tommy Robinson. And his events have been family friendly up until this point, but good on Tommy that when the violence came, that he was saying, hey, try and get the children out of here. Women and children, he said. poor guys. But yes, even said, try and get police escorts out of here to save the vulnerable people, especially the children, and also was asking if anybody in the surrounding houses would allow the children to be safely harboured until the violence subsided. So, police say speech or actions that are full of hate will not be tolerated after violence fled between rival groups at an election campaign event organised by Tommy Robinson in Oldham. Police cars were smashed by flying objects and bricks and eggs were thrown. Yes, 2 police cars, I believe. Bricks and eggs were thrown, as well as a pair of scissors, as hundreds of people gathered to see the English Defence League founder. It really annoys me when they keep saying this, because Tommy Robinson obviously distanced himself from the English Defence League because of where it was going, which means, and this is because this pushes the narrative, and I've spoken to people, that when they say, oh yeah, I speak to people in the English Defence League, and I don't like their views, and therefore I don't like Tommy Robinson's views either because he agrees with them. It's like, well, no. The one person you know who disagrees with the English Defence League and what it has become is Tommy Robinson, because he is the only person to say that I've removed myself from that and tried to distance myself from it because of what it has become. But because they keep pushing English Defence League founder and they don't mention that he has removed himself from the group, tried to distance himself from what it has become and where he was worried it was going, that they're trying to say that he still agrees with English Defence League members. He doesn't. The only person you know who doesn't is Tommy Robinson. So you're lying by omission. If you should say, sure, the English Defence League founder, who has since distanced himself from everything that they have become, if you really wish to include that, but you don't. In the Limeside area of the town on Saturday night yesterday, there was an organised counter-demonstration by a group calling itself the Muslim Defence League. They have existed for a few years now. Tensions flared on residential roads around 7th Avenue. Exactly, residential because he was trying to be away from the city. Here we have hundreds. They do mention police escorted the group there. About why we allow the event itself to take place. And they say, in line with everyone's right to free speech, and we do not have any powers to stop this from happening. But when we say free speech, however, we certainly do not mean speech or actions that are full of hate. Well, that's all down to your ideology, so you don't mean free speech then. Hate will never, ever be tolerated, not only in Oldham, but in the whole of Greater Manchester, and we will seek out those who think that it is acceptable and hold them to account. Well, does that include Islam? Obviously, strike them at the neck where you find them, all that good stuff, and the Manchester Arena having a Quran quote saying, he who saves one man saves us all, which is to mean redemption by converting to Islam. Similar to, you see, Jehovah's Witnesses saying, accept Jesus and you will be saved. That kind of message, if you're being charitable. But putting that on the Manchester Arena 2 years after the Islamic bombing is in very poor taste. As part of our policing operation last night, officers engaged with a group intent on going to Limeside Yes. In line with our duty to minimise disruption to the local area as much as possible, officers walked with the group and sought to reduce any problems on the route they took. So if you do see reports and saying, well, officers led them there because they weren't sure where they were going, the police say that the point was to stop problems on the route they took. If you're being charitable, then you would say the police led them there so that if anything happened, if anything kicked off, then they could snap down on it straight away and prevent it from happening, to enforce the law equally among everyone, so that, hey, you do have the chance to go there and show yourself to say, I'm protesting what that person says and I disagree with it, in this case, a Muslim Defence League 2 Tommy Robinson, but should anybody start being violent, then they clamp down straight away. They didn't. They waited until after property was vandalised, until the policemen were attacked before fighting back. So that was obviously after, as I mentioned earlier, Tommy Robinson had to tell people to get their children away. Reports are with gunshots, but they're not true, so it's okay. They do suggest that there are a few people, will trace those responsible for the disturbance, use all available powers to do so, and they will identify anyone that they can, and they do ask if you have any footage or images to send. The nice thing, though, is that I must be clear that these people are not a representation of the people of Oldham. Today, local residents have selflessly cleaned their streets and the surrounding areas, which I not only want to thank them for, but I think it sends a clear message to those who had no regard for the harm or mess they were causing, that you are not welcome. And that's good, considering it was the local people who came out to support Tommy Robinson, and then people all the way from Halifax came out to protest him. Then the local people would clean up after themselves. Maybe they still have a bit of pride in their country, and therefore they wish to take care of it. And the more pride you have, the better your place looks. If it's just clean up your room, and then the more proud you are of it, and the better it gets. I would just like to point out one thing from the photos they put, that it seems this gentleman here, who is levitating mid-stride, if you're not sure what that is and you think he might be throwing a brick, I can assure you that it is a phone, at least from what I can tell, because later on it shows the same gentleman here holding his phone. And again, it is with the police in front of him. Okay, moving on. Police asked McDonald's to hold milkshake sale during Farrage rally, and you have the photo here. We will not be selling milkshakes or ice cream tonight due to a police request given recent events. Burger King has been pushing back about this, saying that they will be selling milkshakes, so have fun. It's up to you to decide if they are encouraging political violence or not. They have not responded to comment. I know Tim Pool has followed up on this as well. A McDonald's spokesperson confirmed they'd been asked to stop sales of its milkshake and McFly products on Friday evening. I'd like to point out from this lovely young lady here, who says, "We joined the EU so the Nazis wouldn't happen again. History is repeating itself, one sad little man at a time," because we're going to be talking about socialists encouraging restriction of individual liberty. Here we have Tommy again, and then they mention Carl Benjamin, or Benjamin was in Truro, but yeah, Carl Benjamin Sargon. A week ago, two protesters tried to throw a drink over him during a public gathering at the far-right activist Marley Yiannopoulos. I did not see anything at all that makes him far-right. He obviously disavows that label and disagrees with people who do identify themselves as far-right. Carl Benjamin is being investigated by police for rape comments, as in being investigated by police for jokes during a blooper reel targeted the Labour MP Jess Phillips. No, it really depends what you think is the topic of the joke, that normally the joke is an idea or a concept instead of a person laughing at the idea. It's ridiculous that we're being investigated by police for jokes, but seeing as in Greater Manchester they've said that hate will not be tolerated at all, if they're defining hate, then you're screwed. But I do like this a little bit at the end of The Guardian. The UK might be leaving Europe, but Guardian isn't. We will continue our mission to look outwards rather than inwards. Yeah, maybe it's time for some introspection, maybe. Final story today. Switzerland votes for tighter gun laws despite objection from Populist Party. Proposal requires firearm users to have regular training and keep registry of gun collections. I do like this bit because towards the end they say, ahead of the vote, most of Switzerland's major political parties except the populist Swiss People's Party favour the measure, with support strongest among socialists and Greens. Funny that. This is from the EU saying, hey, you've got to adopt our laws or you can't be with us. And they're restricting individual liberty, which of course coincides very nicely with the young lady's side, saying the Nazis wouldn't happen again. Well, they are. It's Germany pushing it again, isn't it? Yes. Switzerland. So this is the polling outside. Public broadcasters said more than 63% of voters nationwide agreed to align with the European Union firearms rule. So it's 2-1, essentially. It's regular referendums give citizens direct say in policy making, but people don't like it because they do mention the recent shootings in Belgium, or the recent attacks in Belgium, France, and the United Kingdom, which has much stricter gun laws, and of course it hasn't happened in Switzerland, and they're saying, well, to keep everyone safe, you've got to have stricter gun laws. Basically, we're going to change the laws in the place which hasn't been affected instead of the places that have been affected, and considering that the violent crime rate in Brazil has gone down since gun laws have been loosened, this is the beginning of the end for Switzerland, I fear. The Swiss proposal, among other things, requires regular training on the use of firearms, special waivers to own some semi-automatic weapons, so everything except for machine guns, basically, and serial number tracking system for key parts of some guns. Gun owners will also have to register any weapons not already registered within 3 years and keep a registry of their gun collections, just like the mandatory gun registry set by the National Socialists in, I think, 1942, but it could have been earlier. Maybe 1943, but it could have been earlier. Here we go. Said similar measures adopted by the EU after deadly extremist attacks are needed to ensure strong police cooperation and economic ties with Switzerland's partners in Europe's Schengen visa-free travel zone, as they're not in the European Union. Well, obviously not, considering Switzerland hasn't been affected by these things, but the other countries that have the stricter laws do. It's ridiculous. And here we go. Good on you, The Independent, and I do think this is a good article by The Independent, as much as I disagree with them so much. Credit where it's due. Opponents insist the proposal would violate Switzerland's constitution and do little to fight extremism or crime. Yeah. They said the weapons used in recent attacks in Europe were not obtained legally, just like in America, where most of it's gang-related anyway, and illegally owned firearms, and 98% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones anyway. Said the weapons used in recent attacks in Europe were not obtained legally, and argued the proposal cracks down mainly on lawful gun owners in Switzerland. Yes, it does, indeed, because, as I've said before, if you are going out and wish to defend yourself, then maybe you're going to take a weapon out 1,000 times, and you're going to be caught that 1,000th time and be imprisoned for it. Whereas if you're going out with intent to cause harm, you only need to take it out once, in which case you've got a 0.1% chance of being caught, for example, instead of a 100% chance of being caught eventually. So it favours the criminals. Like hot burglaries, much less likely in America than in England. That is, a hot burglary is when the person is home, and a cold burglary is when they're not. But as I mentioned before, in the United Kingdom, you're allowed to have a sword up to 50 centimetres in length. You have to tell the person to leave twice, warn them you have a weapon, and then deal with the ramifications after that. But if they're dead, then they can't argue with you. Okay. But obviously, follow the law wherever you are. Obviously. The rift on the issue has fallen on the rural-urban divide, with city dwellers more inclined to back the EU directive. As is often the case, even Bernie Sanders pointed this out, it's a rural-urban issue, because in the city, police are quicker to react than in rural areas where you're very much fending for yourself. In Europe, it isn't such an issue of being fired in the countryside. I'm not sure how it is in Switzerland, but obviously in the Midwest in America, then police aren't around for miles, if not dozens of miles, so they're going to take a long time. But anyway, that's it for me this evening, so I hope you've had a lovely week, a lovely weekend, or if you're seeing this on Monday, then have a lovely week. Do what you got to do. I hope you're implementing some sort of motivational things on a daily basis and achieving your goals, because, hey, obviously it's reached a point where even if you're not into politics is into you, so you can't help but notice it. But I hope that it doesn't get you down and you still feel like you can get on with life and do your own thing. So make the world a better place, make yourself happy, and enjoy your friends and your family. There's more to life than politics, at least for the time being.